Can Daenerys Targaryen survive the Rim? I'm not talking about this Daenerys. I'm talking about this one. A physically frail girl alone in the wild with 3 very expensive dragon eggs. Eggs that wouldn't hatch for another 30 days and would draw in all sorts of terrible threats. Daenerys decided she must do more than survive on the Rim. She must take it over. She must rule it. So, as she slept that night, she set 5 major goals. Firstly, hatch all 3 dragon eggs. Secondly, have over 10 subjects to rule. She must also conquer 3 cities, have a child, because that was something she struggled with in her show, and finally, build an impressive kingdom. But first, she had to survive, a task made difficult by a strange arrival. Daenerys always had the ability to attract wild men into her orbit, and Maker would be no different. He had decent stats, and allies are essential to surviving on the Rim, not to mention that physique. So Daenerys got to work putting together some food to entice him with. Turns out, the saying is true, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Daenerys inched closer, whispering to him about the connections between mechanoids and terror. She was hoping this would calm him, so she made more happy clicking noises. Click click, she said, with devoted longing in her eyes. Unfortunately, he wasn't a fan. The next day, some traders came by, so Daenerys spent the little silver she had on draconic ambrosia, which would accelerate aging on dragons, allowing them to age a few years in minutes. This would be helpful for when she did have dragons. Then Dany got back to work, building fortifications, realizing how tiring and tedious the manual labor was. It was no job for a queen, so once again, she turned to Maker. This time, she tried gently touching him. Ew. Gross. Then she yelled at him commandingly. Apparently, he was into that. Daenerys understandably decided to wash herself after what transpired. She did find joy in the fact that she was now closer to completing her goal of having 10 whole subjects. So, rather than wallow in her sorrow, she decided to name her kingdom instead. This place would be New King's Landing, like New York, but medieval. So Dany worked, and Maker slept. Then he slept some more. Then some more. You'll never guess what he did next. Then he jump-scared us by getting up suddenly, and he was off! Oh my goodness, he was doing stuff. Look at him go! I see why they call him Maker. However, Daenerys decided he deserved a new name, a Dothraki name to cement his belonging to the colony. He would now be Aggo. Oh hey, free stuff. The colony had fallen into a steady rhythm. Aggo built, Dany harvested, both extremely pale people doing their best under the warm sun. Things took an interesting turn when a charm weaver named Thistle requested to join. She was quite literally a demon, but she was alone, afraid, and most likely naked as well. As Dany would say, I will never turn my back on the people or demons who need me. So she accepted the refugee. Fortunately, Thistle had quite a unique skill set.
Nice.
And unlike Aggo, she didn't waste time sleeping. She did throw up a lot though, like arguably way too much, and soon it became clear why. Hey, solar panels, just what every medieval kingdom needs. Daenerys unfortunately never had children of her own, and she was already getting worried about Thistle's child. How would she feed it? Where would it sleep? Speaking of babies, Aggo compared Daenerys to a beautiful river, and Dany, who at this point had only received affection from her weird brother, fell madly in love. Looks like it's time to get to work on Goal 4. But their joy was short-lived, as that night, in the dead of darkness, they were attacked. Daenerys sent out her soldiers. She guided them from afar. The battle was intense, fiery, bloody. The colony's mostly naked militia did the best with their mundane tools and... oh, well, that was underwhelming. In the quiet moments, Dany fished. Thistle tended to Aggo. But even this tiny sliver of peace was ruined by the arrival of another attack. Dany was hunting nearby, and knew she could not be a coward, especially not with Thistle pregnant and Aggo indisposed. She turned her rifle on the intruder and defended herself. But Ghana would not stop her assault. She moved forward with such dedication that Dany began to panic. Dany tried desperately to keep distance between the two of them, but the attacker pursued aggressively. Even a river was not enough to thwart Ghana. Dany began to panic, feeling fear crash into her, when suddenly, those she had saved had come to save her. This would be a heartfelt moment if not for the fact that this was the beginning of the end. Dany fled at first, but realizing the two were struggling, she commanded Thistle, who was taking the brunt of the punishment, to back off. Dany then began to attack. They opted to use their fists to try and capture and recruit Ghana, for she was quite powerful. Perhaps too powerful, for Dany was down. Then, Thistle fell down. In a completely shocking turn of events, the team was losing this 1v3. Even Aggo fell. It was completely insane, and immediately Thistle and Dany began crawling away. But Ganna, in her cruelty, captured Dany off the ground. She could think of one or two warlords that would be more than happy to receive a silver-haired consort. It was over. At least, that's what I thought when Thistle's ex-husband arrived. This mysterious dark stranger wasted no time saving the day, and finally, after taking countless punishment, Ganna finally fell. Any second now. Surely she'll go down. What are they feeding these raiders? Oh my god. Seriously? And she was easily dispatched. To thank the stranger for his efforts, he would be Doyle Morris no more, but instead, Jorah. The team worked to recover from Ganna's onslaught. They didn't know it then, but Thistle had actually lost her child to her injuries, and for this, she would never forgive Ganna. That day, the struggles continued, for the Rim is a cruel place and many suffered to escape its wrath, including Nag, who despite Dany's critical condition, she could not turn her back on either. Accompanying Nag were 3 malicious wasters eager to recapture him. The team was in no position to fight, so they barred all doors and prayed the warriors outside would give up and leave. When that didn't work, Nag, the only able-bodied man in the team, got to work defending his new home. He wouldn't have to do it alone, as Jorah and Thistle, despite their injuries, ran to help him. Together, the two managed to take one down. Unfortunately, they were unaware of trouble brewing elsewhere. It took a painfully long time, and eventually they needed the aid of more people to prevent another Ganna situation. But finally, success. The next day came, and Dany wished it could have been peaceful, but unfortunately Thistle was coming to terms with her loss, and no one could blame her for not handling it well as she wandered aimlessly and dazed. And although Daenerys did feel partially responsible, she knew the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few, and was happy that at least her colony had survived almost perishing. Oh, and they ate Ganna. But with sunrise came a new day. A few ducks had wandered in, and Aggo got to work crafting them a coop like no other. But Randy, I mean the gods, could not spare us more than a single evening for a break, for the next day another deserter was in need of saving, and despite the absolutely disarrayed state of her clan, Dany knew she had to accept. At the very least this one was a knight, so it seemed appropriate to name him accordingly. And when his pursuers followed, the team gathered together to make quick work of the attackers. They hoped to capture them and recruit them, but it simply wasn't meant to be. It was in those dark and uncertain moments, though, that Dany was certain of her feelings. She had grown to love Aggo and he her, so I did the only thing appropriate and changed his name. For some reason this infuriated Nag, perhaps because he wanted a new name of his own. But before he could pray to the narrator to do so, he became vicious and aggressive. He went after sweet and unsuspecting Thistle, and this is kind of where I messed up. At first I was going to have Thistle defend herself, but then I realized she could just arrest him. After arresting him, I thought if I let him go, it would be like releasing him and he'd just join back the team, but yeah, I was wrong. And when I realized this to arrest him again, yeah. Anyways, look at these chickens, aren't they neat? Taking this moment of somewhat peace, the team began building again, eager to make Dany a kingdom like no other. We fought off intruders, and then even more intruders, and then even more intruders. But unfortunately, this night would be different. Like after any other fight, Dany began tending to her wounded soldiers, and even Jorah helped tend to Thistle. But unfortunately, sometimes it isn't battle that delivers unto us our end, but the guilt, pain, and fear we carry on afterwards that infects us within and prospers into unbecoming. Anyways, look at these donkeys, aren't they neat? To distract her people from the recent tragedies, Dany decided to make them a grand dining room. She proceeded to take 10 minutes of real time to figure out the ideal layout. Eventually, she gave up. The team seemed to be in higher spirits nonetheless. The boys hung around outside and played with a cat. Dany found this rather encouraging and took it as motivation to try again with the dining room. She was so distracted trying to make this dining room perfect that she hadn't even noticed. We had dragons. While she was busily interior decorating, they had hatched. Dany was full of joy, and so was the rest of the clan, but arguably, most of all, I, the narrator, was thrilled above all. It was time to name them, and luckily, this was a no-brainer. This meant we had completed our first goal as well. To mark the next chapter, I decided to spruce up the team. I gave Drogo a more wild haircut, he felt very uwu about this. I then tried to make Barristan look a bit older, but ended up making him look like a softy boy instead. But anyways, with one quest out of the way, Dany was eager to tackle another, and now, with her dragons, despite being nothing but babus, she had her eyes on her first city to conquer, specifically the Wasters that had given them so much trouble. Her conquering plans were interrupted, however, by Piotr. Yeah, he looks fine, he can wait. Now, I forgot to record this part, but I administered the draconic ambrosia I had bought from the trader. Administering it will make a dragon grow a random number of years from 1 to 8, or something similar to that. This was enough to give the dragons a few years each, so that they were still juveniles, but no longer babies. So, with that in mind, Dany plotted her first conquest. She, along with Jorah and the dragons, were off. Luckily, everything was fine at home while they were gone. Daenerys had arrived at the city, and after uttering a single command, Dracarys, her dragons got to work burning it all down. It was a little messy, but what do you expect from baby's first conquest? And once the Wasters were fleeing, Dany and Jorah rushed back to tend to the dragons and salvage what they could. Fortunately, things were still going absolutely great back home. After some meticulous nursing, it seemed Daenerys had done it. She had conquered her first city, and maybe they even had a prisoner to transport back with them. It's a good thing she had nothing else to worry about. And when she asked her people how things were without her, they let her know it was pretty quiet and uneventful. But this uneventfulness was short-lived, as when Dany arrived, so had a stranger. A French stranger. Luckily, Dany was pretty experienced when it comes to taming and handling wild men at this point. Unlike many before him, Frenchie too succumbed to her charms and joined the kingdom. Dany gave him a new name, a non-French name, and he got to work. Despite best efforts, he still retained a bit of wildness in him, but Dany was doing her best to not hold a grudge. Some nights, there was peace. Other nights, they would be fighting flesh-made monsters with dragon fire. There was also that one elephant incident. And if you've been liking what you've been seeing, please consider subscribing. It appeared on her sure and confident as ever, Dany knew the beast would succumb to her persuasion and authority, for she, like the Targaryens before her, was fearless. She opted to name this beautiful beast after another giant dragon, Vhagar. It was that evening that something else unexpected happened. In a night, one that was surely dark and full of terror, a stranger approached. Dany greeted the mysterious woman, and although she was very suspicious and every fiber of her being disliked the woman's presence, Dany knew she could not turn her back on those in need, so she welcomed the priestess. The priestess didn't waste any time starting a ritual and proclaiming Daenerys' chosen one and true ruler of the realm. Talk about suck up. Feeling emboldened, the queen decided it was time for another conquest. With the aid of Vhagar, a fully grown adult dragon, the little Rim city held no chance. Blessings seemed to rain down on this day, as a few refugees temporarily sought shelter at the colony, offering menial labor in return. Is child labor legal on the Rim? They ate muffalos. They fought bloodthirsty vampires. They besmirched Geneva Conventions and amassed prisoners of war in a tight corridor. And they even played Blueprint Simulator. Even the ancient danger stood no chance against dragons, but most importantly of all, ducks. There was also this one mammoth incident, but we don't really need to get into the details about it. Back to the ducks. Dany's ranks continued to grow. Julie, one of the vampires, had decided to join, as had Irina, a woman Dany had rescued from the ancient danger, and not to mention, Piotr was finally back on his feet. And it was while recording this fascinating rat that I got the most troubling notification. Honestly, who could have ever seen this coming? Dany was confident the Red Priestess was no match for her dragons, and she let Vhagar deal with the betrayal. They went back and forth, nail in tooth meeting magical gibberish and soft human skin. The battle was all but won. At least, that's what I thought. Like bad gas station sushi, you just couldn't keep Melisandre down. I was deciding what to do with her when I got another notification. And honestly, I kind of got so distracted dealing with this rift that I kind of forgot about Melisandre. So, yeah, I don't really know what happened to her. Totally not creepy or concerning. On the bright side, another recruit had joined to take Melisandre's place. Dany still had fond memories of the last Charm Weaver that had joined her colony, and unlike Thistle, Dany was dedicated to protecting this one. New King's Landing had become a safe and secure place for its citizens. The bad times were certainly behind us, so we continued to build and rebuild. They mended fences. They planted crops. They took down any threat that looked at 4 fiery dragons and said, "Oh boy, more please." And there was surprisingly many with that mindset. Unfortunately, the issue with dragons for defense were the fires that followed afterwards. The flames raged from sunset to sunup, threatening to burn everything Dany had worked so hard to build. The fires even drove some to breaking point. Unfortunately, some would fall into exhaustion fighting the fires. This one fire proved so bright and so brutal that one by one the colonists fell to it. And instead of saving them, Dany had her first bouts of madness, unable to bring herself to rescue her screaming friends. Luckily, Rhaegar felt differently, but the fire burnt on. Honestly, at some point, Dany probably should have stopped sending people to deal with it. Despite how terrifying it all was, her subjects had all survived. No one was injured, and that in itself felt like a sign to let the good times roll. Food reserves were at an all-time high. More farms were built. Thrumbos were brought down. Mechanoids were dismantled. Oh no, that duck. Oh god, Rhaegar, don't eat it, don't. Oh, okay. Alright. Whew. What even is that thing? Remy, the Charm Weaver, gave birth to a healthy child, whom we named after our fallen ally, Barbo. And to top it off, the base was really starting to come together. It was so fulfilling to see how quickly things change. At this point, Dany had even accumulated a steady amount of citizens, successfully recruiting those who were once our enemies, bringing the total citizen count to 11, and surpassing our second goal. We made the most of the peace times, taking time to strengthen ourselves, our base, and our bonds with one another. Maybe it was because things were going so well that Dany had decided now was time to strike another goal off her list, mainly the one to conquer another kingdom. So she set her eyes on a target, taking solace in the fact that if this city fell, it would be the beginning of a new era. So she arrived, knowing to slink back and watch her dragons dismantle the base. This was a routine conquest, as far as any could tell, albeit a little chaotic as these battles often were, but with minimal struggling, her dragons had set fire to their sunflower fields and torn their families apart. We're the good guys, right? Either way, the city was Dany's, and this marked her 3rd conquest. Another mission complete. We were on a roll. We had even returned with a few prisoners, which we were eager to tend to and hopefully recruit. As Daenerys once said, "Join me or die." Speaking of ducks, which I know isn't relevant, but a segue is a segue, our duck population was booming, and whenever things felt uncertain, it brought great joy to merely watch the ducks. Yeah, we might have to start sterilizing them. See, you would think that the gods would be happy with our progress, that they would be content to let us continue building this impressive kingdom. Well, instead, the heavens let their fury be known. We were under attack, but not just any attack. These were Nephilim, a modded race that unfortunately were immortal. Yeah, that's right. We somehow had to defeat an army of imperial, ultra-powerful, immortal angels. As you can probably imagine, this was going to take a while. And both Dany and myself had absolutely no idea how this was going to go. The Nephilim would quite literally never die, but the dragons eventually would. This went on for a comedically long time. Until finally, they began to fall. It was apparent now that nothing on the rim could beat 3 juvenile dragons plus a fully grown Rhaegar. We proceeded to capture the Nephilim, eager to make their immortal souls a part of New King's Landing. Dany was confused by these white-haired foes though, as her usual join me or die rhetoric doesn't really work against the immortal. And even for the Nephilim in their darkest time, they were able to find love and purpose in New King's Landing. Nothing like finding love in a bloody cell where you're forced to sleep on the ground with several other captives. Nonetheless, Dany got back to work building and creating more farms. In fact, love was blooming all over the rim. Jorah really has a type. Now here's a question for you. Why is Rhaegar attacking this colonist? Yeah, that's not Rhaegar. While the rogue dragon attacked us, and fortunately our resident dragon whisperer Dany was away on peace talks. If you're curious, this is how those peace talks were going. Unfortunately, at the base, this dragon fight wasn't getting anywhere. The two were locked in on each other, both sustaining life-threatening injuries. Meanwhile, the colonist, aptly named Gerber, was unable to withstand his own wounds. Drogo tried to help, but in his anger and aggression, he too made poor decisions. Just gonna quickly snag him and tiptoe on out of here, don't mind us. The battle raged on for what felt like it'd be forever, until, in the nick of time, the cavalry had arrived. We prepared a grave for Gerber. Not one for the rogue dragon, though. Decided to eat him instead. Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. Also, this really funny thing happened where Remy, in one of her classic psychotic breakdowns, began hitting the prisoner. Meanwhile, Dany was healing the prisoner she was hitting. The prisoner was immortal and completely unbothered, and so this happened for the next 5 minutes or so. Oh, no wonder Remy's so upset. To be honest, I have no clue what happened to Barbo 2. Here's to hoping Barbo 3 has better luck. But yeah, Remy wasn't handling the passing of her son well. Run, Constance, run! Oh wow, she's still chasing him. Oh, look at her go. Anyways, we got back to work. We expanded the city. We defended from invaders. We built a giant wall to make King's Landing great again. We also rescued a strange person who fell from the sky. We even got a taste of White Walkers. And we narrowly survived a vicious squirrel attack. But all this left Dany wondering about her next task, the one her heart longed for most of all, to have a child. Time went on. Her kingdom grew, as did her dragons and the people that inhabited New King's Landing. In a strange irony, children never seemed to happen for Daenerys, but as she looked upon her realm, she sighed with a heavy heart and crossed out her final task. Sometimes you can't do everything you set out to do. This could have been much worse. This could have ended like actual Game of Thrones. And so Daenerys decided to find satisfaction in how far she came, and maybe we all need to extend ourselves that courtesy. And New King's Landing continued to thrive, as it would until another challenge came along to test it. Oh no, global warming.